Imagine pulling off a bank heist so perfect that no alarms went off, no witnesses saw a thing, and the police were left scratching their heads for months. No guns, no violence, just pure genius. This is the true story of the greatest bank heist no one talks about, and how the criminals almost got away with it. It was August 2005, and something incredible was about to happen in the bustling city of Fortaleza, Brazil. A place known for its beaches, vibrant culture, and soon one of the most mind-blowing bank heists in history. But what makes this story different from your typical robbery? There were no guns, no dramatic hostage situations, and no high-speed chases. Instead, it was a crime built on patience, precision, and pure genius. The target? The Central Bank of Brazil Fortaleza branch. A massive, highly secured facility, built like a fortress, housing millions of dollars in cash. With its thick steel-reinforced walls, armed security, and round-the-clock surveillance, robbing this place seemed impossible. But for a group of masterminds, impossible was just another word for a challenge. And so, the plan was set in motion. A small group of brilliant yet dangerous criminals came together, each one bringing a unique skill set: engineers, construction workers, and experts in logistics. These weren't just petty thieves looking for quick cash. These were professionals, men who knew how to work in the shadows, men who could disappear without a trace, and most importantly, men who had the patience to pull off something the world had never seen before. But here's where it gets crazy. Instead of storming into the bank with masks and weapons, they decided to take a completely different approach. One that would take months to execute, but if successful, would allow them to vanish with millions, without setting off a single alarm. What did they do? They dug. And they didn't just dig a hole. They built a masterpiece. The plan was as insane as it was brilliant. No guns, no alarms, no forced entry. Just a tunnel stretching 78 meters, almost the length of a football field, directly beneath one of the most secure bank vaults in Brazil. But this wasn't just any tunnel. This was a carefully engineered masterpiece. The criminals knew they couldn't just start digging randomly. A tunnel of this scale required serious planning, the kind that only professionals could pull off. They needed to avoid underground pipes, city infrastructure, and, most importantly, any suspicion from authorities. So, to cover their tracks, they came up with a brilliant disguise. They rented a small commercial property just a few blocks away from the bank, telling everyone they were opening a landscaping business. They even put up signs, hired a few employees, and acted like a normal company. Every day, they worked in broad daylight, loading and unloading tools, bringing in bags of soil, and discussing garden projects with their fake customers. To any passerby, it looked like just another small business trying to make a living. But beneath the surface, they were building the escape route of a lifetime. Inside the rented building, they installed soundproofing materials so that the noise from digging wouldn't alert neighbors. They reinforced the tunnel with wood and plastic panels, preventing it from collapsing, and every night they carefully removed hundreds of pounds of dirt, bagging it up and disposing of it discreetly to avoid raising any suspicion. Day by day, meter by meter, they got closer to the vault. And the craziest part? It took them 3 months. Think about that. 3 months of pure dedication, crawling underground in near-total darkness, breathing in dust, working in tight, claustrophobic spaces, all while knowing that one mistake could bury them alive or expose them before they were ready. But they didn't stop. They were too close to the prize. And then, after nearly 90 days of digging, the moment of truth arrived. They were just meters away from the vault. The final breakthrough was about to happen, but they had to get everything perfect, because once they were inside, there was no turning back. And that's when they made history. It was a quiet weekend in Fortaleza. The bank was closed, the streets were empty, no employees, no customers, just the cold steel of the vault, sitting on top of millions in cash, completely unguarded. But deep underground, something was happening. After 3 months of non-stop digging, the thieves finally broke through. The floor of the bank's vault, fortified with thick concrete and steel reinforcements, now had a perfectly cut hole just wide enough for a person to slip through. One by one, they crawled up into the vault. No alarms were triggered, no motion sensors went off. The bank's security system had one major flaw. It was designed to stop criminals from breaking in through the doors and windows, but it never accounted for an attack from below. Inside, the sight was unbelievable. Stacks upon stacks of Brazilian reais were piled high, unmarked bills worth over 160 million reais. That's nearly 70 million US dollars in cash. But here's where the plan gets even smarter. They didn't just grab everything and run. They knew that stealing large bundles of cash would be risky. Serial numbers on new bills could be traced. Marked bills could lead the police straight to them. So they carefully selected only the unmarked, non-sequential bills, the ones that would be nearly impossible to track. And in just one night, they pulled off what seemed impossible. They had successfully robbed one of the most secure banks in Brazil and left without a trace. No fingerprints, no forced entry, no evidence that anyone had ever been inside. And then, they vanished. Monday morning. The Central Bank of Fortaleza was supposed to open like any other day. Employees walked in expecting business as usual, but as they approached the vault, something felt off. The heavy steel door was still locked. The security systems hadn't detected a thing, and yet, when they finally entered the vault, their jaws dropped. Millions of reais, gone. At first, the bank staff was in complete shock. How could this even be possible? There were no alarms triggered, no broken doors, no forced entry. It was as if the money had disappeared into thin air. Panic set in. The police were called immediately. Investigators rushed to the scene expecting to find security footage, broken locks, or maybe even some kind of electronic hacking. But instead, they found absolutely nothing. The vault had been emptied in silence. There were no traces of the robbers, no clues left behind. It was as if the perfect crime had been committed. But then, someone noticed something strange. In the corner of the vault, near the floor, there was a small opening. It was barely noticeable at first, but when they looked closer, they realized what it was. A hole leading underground. And when they followed it, they discovered the impossible. A tunnel, 78 meters long. A perfectly engineered escape route stretching from the bank to a random landscaping business a few blocks away. The police were in disbelief. It was the kind of thing you'd see in a Hollywood movie, not in real life, but it was real. And the thieves? They were already long gone. Now the biggest question remained, who did this? And where was the money? With the tunnel uncovered, the police knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the work of a few amateurs. This was a highly organized operation planned by criminal masterminds. But there was one big problem. The robbers were gone. Brazilian authorities launched the largest manhunt in the country's history. They tracked every lead, interrogated suspects, and followed the money. But the thieves had planned for this. They didn't keep the stolen cash in bank accounts. They didn't make flashy purchases. They disappeared like ghosts. But as with every perfect crime, there was one flaw: greed. Weeks after the heist, the police started making arrests. One by one, small-time accomplices were caught spending suspicious amounts of cash. They led investigators to some of the key players behind the operation, but not the mastermind. And then, something shocking happened. The suspected leader of the heist turned up dead. He had been kidnapped and murdered by a rival gang that wanted a piece of the fortune. The police believed that some of the criminals who took part in the heist were double-crossed. But by who? That remains a mystery to this day. And the money? Only a fraction of it was ever recovered. More than $50 million simply vanished. Some say it was smuggled out of the country. Others believe it's still hidden somewhere, waiting to be found. But one thing is certain. This was one of the greatest bank heists in history. No shootouts, no alarms, no mistakes. Just months of planning, a tunnel leading straight to a fortune, and an escape so flawless, it left the police clueless. The only thing that ruined it? Human greed. So, what do you think? Was this the smartest heist ever pulled off? Or just another example of criminals getting too greedy? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love insane true crime and high-stakes success stories, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.